I'm a fiscal conservative. Take a look at it. It's no different than what you do in your households. You don't spend more than you take in. Look at Obama's budget. 3.6 trillion in spending, only taking in 2.4 trillion. It doesn't add up. The CBO just came out yesterday. It's going to be $20 trillion in debt by the year 2020. That means every household in this room is going to owe $170,000. It's unfathomable. You know, we need to go back to the core principles of this party of lower taxes and individual responsibility. You know, how did we get into this mess? We had Republicans in office from 2001 to 2007, and they took a surplus and turned it into a budget deficit. They said they were the party of less, earmarks. They had a record number of earmarks while the Republicans were there. And then on top of that, we had 3 congressmen who went to jail for selling those earmarks. Dan Burton was in office during those 6 years, and his fingerprints are over those budgets. Thank you.
You know, it seemed tough at the time, but I grew up in a family in a little town smaller than this one, and my mother cut hair in the corner of our home for about 30 years until she died of cancer. And my father was a realtor, self-employed, and ran a little pop-in store. All the times I remember the economy coming and going over those years, I never remember even thinking or hearing around the dinner table of them thinking about the government helping. Okay, so that began to forge my philosophy about the economy. And it's reflected in our founders' intent, and it's reflected in what they taught me at Purdue University and the School of Economics. And it's what I know every day when I try to create jobs in my business. It's about creating a platform with government of a safe place for us to do business with the freedom to realize the American dream and the freedom to fail. And those are not economic principles, they're moral concepts, and they're the ones that I embrace.
One of those issues, hard to define the economy in a minute. We're going to be at Nick's tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock for those downtown. For those of you who live here locally, would love to talk to you about this issue and others. I believe in 2 words, that freedom works. That the best way to give everybody a chance in American success to put more freedom and less government into their lives. I believe we can't tax our way into prosperity or spend our way out of debt. And if we want to get this economy back turned around, we've got to learn lessons from what we did in the 1980s under Ronald Reagan, where we cut taxes across the board and made it okay to make money in America again. As Andy talked about, we saw an explosion in federal revenues during that time. We need to do something that we didn't really do in the 80s, but we did well in the 90s, and that is rein in spending. The size of our federal government has grown by $1 trillion in the last 2 years. We've got to take that trillion out, and that'd be a good start. Thank you.
I don't need to read a lot of economics books. I learned from my mom, a good old German lady from Fort Wayne. She taught me a couple things when I was a young kid. She said, nothing in life is free. You can't spend more money than you have. And when you max out your credit card, which you shouldn't have in the first place, you can't go next door and ask your neighbor for his or her credit card. And I've tried to apply those principles as a servant leader in the state legislature. Let me tell you how I've done it. When farmers came to me and told me about the most hated tax in America, which I agreed is the inheritance tax, I went to work and I got rid of the inheritance tax for 1/2 of all Hoosier estates. So now, when somebody passes on their small dry cleaners or their small farm or their small gas station to their young ones, they don't have to sell the business to pay the tax. I also sponsored a constitutional amendment to rein in state government that says you can't spend more money in state government than the average household income in this state. That hasn't been successful yet, but we will make it successful in Indiana. I'll do the same thing in Washington.
I believe our economy is driven by increasing demand, by a strong workforce and a strong middle class. And the stronger workforce you have, the more purchasing power they have. They buy the goods and materials. That results in businesses being able to expand their inventories and hire more workers. Now, I like to keep taxes low as well, and I hate deficits as well. But let me tell you what the largest tax on you is becoming. It's the massive deregulation of the financial institution, which has resulted in every American being responsible now for the bailout of these Wall Street banks that have cost us trillions of dollars. So I will tell you right now, if we want to get to the heart of the issue about our federal budget, there are four main things that comprise our federal budget. 80% Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and defense spending, and the fifth is the interest on the debt. If you want to be fiscally responsible, you go after those items.
We have a rebuttal. Mr. Murphy.
Oh,
Me off. All right. I think if you look at it, we got to look at it a couple of different ways. In 2020, 30% of the American people are going to be dependent on the United States government for their life, for everything that they have, their food, their clothing, everything. We've got to stop that. Absolutely have got to turn things around. We can't demand, we have to stop demanding for benefits and for favors from the government. The health care bill being one of them. Welfare being another one. So we have to look at what we are willing to pay for and what we're not willing to pay for. And the only way these benefits are going to get passed are raising taxes. And we have to stop that. The people in Congress right now pass these bills. They pass them. We need to get them out of Congress, and we need them to listen to the voice of the people who said enough is enough. We want to have a free economic society. We want to be able to grow our businesses, and we are tired of supporting those who won't work.
The Republican mic is working. I'm sure Dr. Nasser's a good man, but when I heard that word regulate, the hair stood up on my back. Let me tell you why. When I had a chance to lead in the Indiana legislature in 2005 and 2006 as chairman of the Technology Committee, the first thing I did was jump on the deregulation bandwagon. I deregulated with many of my friends in the legislature the telecommunications industry. In 3 years, here's what it's done. And these aren't my numbers, these are Mitch Daniels' numbers. $1.5 billion in private investment in this state, 2,500 new jobs, and 4,000 to 6,000 jobs saved. Hopefully some of those here in Huntington County. Mitch Daniels, to this day, says it's one of the 3 best things that's happened during his entire administration. And I think he's been a pretty darn good governor. Regulate? Heck no. Deregulate. Create jobs. It's in the plan. If we accomplish a fraction of what's in this plan, we'll produce thousands of jobs for the state of Indiana. Thank you.
Our next question. Do you feel that membership in the United Nations is necessary and in the best interest of the United States citizens? Why or why not? We begin with Mr. McCall.
Thank you very much. Again, as I said, I've had the opportunity to travel all over the world. And I know that many in this room probably see the things that the United Nations has done that they're upset with. Specifically, Andy will, I'm sure, talk about the money spent that goes on there. But believe it or not, there are some good things. The World Health Organization, some of the food programs, the HIV programs that are going on in Africa and other places. Now, some of the missions that they've done through the military have not been as great. And that's where there's been some problems. You take a look at also some of the funding. We fund almost 1/3 of the United Nations. I think everybody needs to give their fair share. I would not throw the baby out with the bathwater. I would not get rid of the United Nations, but I'd take a look at the sovereignty issues and those that have to do specifically with peacekeeping. But as a physician, all the good things that the United Nations do, I would keep going. Thank you.
I want to make an announcement to you with the first few seconds of my 15 left. It is very easy for politicians and candidates to say things that you're going to clap about. Okay? And I want you to have the old meter that my farm buddies have on. And when you hear this stuff going and it sounds too good to be true, it is. Now, the second part. There was a day when I was a young kid following Dick Lugar and Dan Quayle and others around that I would have probably answered this differently. There was a time when Harry Truman and others probably thought that the UN made some sense, okay? But right now I will tell you the honest truth, and I don't even like to hear myself say it. If we can't fix the UN, we got to get out of it.